about some of the topics today. And for those who are interested, obviously, I do like the normal formatted stream here. Um, I'm also streaming live on Shorts. So if you want to watch this on a vertical kind of format, then by all means you can do that as well. Just a heads up there. And you can see a different version of the stream there if you prefer kind of like the vertical format on your mobile phone. And yeah, let's see who is around to interact and all that. But obviously, the big movie of the week. Now, first of all, I have to say that tonight was a special advanced screening. They like to call it fan screenings. It all depends on like where or which theater you watched it at. But it's like early screening, fan screening, however you want to call it. But the movie comes out in previews tomorrow. So when I say previews, like Thursday nights are like the preview release night. So not all theaters have showings all day. Sometimes showings start later on in the evening. Here in New York, there are a lot of theaters that have these like Thursday showings, like in the afternoon. So they're really trying to get a jump on early screenings of any movie that comes out every week. And it's interesting too because it's like I remember back in the day, whenever a movie came out during the week, and it was a midnight release on the Thursday prior to the Friday it was coming out. And I remember, when you're younger, you don't mind being out there past midnight, especially if you're watching a movie that you really want to see, especially if it's like a major blockbuster, right? But as you get older, you have other responsibilities, you have work to go to. But nowadays, it just doesn't seem like that's going to be an issue because every Thursday screening or showtime of any new movie that comes out that week, you could easily go to a theater like around 7 p.m. and you'll be able to catch it. So it's interesting how that landscape has changed and how that time format has changed for the Thursday quote unquote preview nights for a brand new movie. But tonight was, like I said, it was a special fan screening or however you want to call it of The Fall Guy. And this was a movie that, when I heard it announced and I heard that it was being made, I was interested mainly because of Ryan Gosling. I feel like Ryan Gosling's personality and character kind of fits really well in the premise of this movie. And the premise of the movie is basically you have Ryan Gosling, who's a stunt performer, right? Stunt guy, works for movies. And he gets himself into an accident that happened on set that pretty much takes him out of the game for a while. But the one thing that really took him out of the game, or the one thing that really hurt him outside of the accident, was the fact that his relationship between Emily Blunt, who at the time of the accident was a camera operator or a director of camera operations, they had a little fling going on, and because of the accident, that fizzled out. I'll get more into that when I talk spoilers later on. So basically, it's now him trying to get back not only into the business, but in hopes to rekindle this relationship with Emily Blunt's character. And then there's a whole hijinks thing that ensues while that all happens because there's an underlying plot as to him going back to work and then him, trying to get back with Emily Blunt. There's other things happening around. And if you've seen the trailer, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. However, the trailers doesn't exactly tell you really what this whole underlying thing that's happening. You think it's telling you something, but it's really not. It's like one of those, like it's like a twist kind of thing like that. So, but the another thing that really got me excited for this and something that I was really looking forward to watching, is because what a lot of people I think don't realize is that this movie is a take on the original 1980s TV show The Fall Guy. And then if you're younger than my generation, you're probably wondering what the hell I'm talking about. There was a show on TV called The Fall Guy. It starred Lee Majors, right? Lee Majors is also known for starring in The Billion Dollar Man. You know, if you know the premise of that show, it's a guy who got into a really bad accident and they spent all this money, $1 million, to rebuild him. And when they rebuilt him, he became like this like superhuman type of guy. He could jump really high or jump really far. He could run really fast, all those things. And then, of course, every week led to some sort of adventure where he got to use his powers. It also, they had like a sister show called The $1 Million Woman. Same type of premise there too. But Lee Majors starred in The Fall Guy. And the premise of the show was that it was a show where the main characters were like a lot of these stunt people. It wasn't just him. He was there with like, I forgot who the female actress is. I believe the female actress is Heather Thomas. Yeah, Heather Thomas. But basically, he had all of these stunt people, and as a side gig, and I'm just vaguely remembering what the premise of this show was. They became like bounty hunters, right? So in every week, every episode, they had some sort of bounty that had to kind of collect or act on. And within the show, they used moments to display some sort of crazy stunt or some sort of like crazy, um, you know, big, grand stunt. Whether it's a car jumping over something or a guy falling out a window, just something nuts, right? To kind of hone in on the whole stunt person kind of thing, right? And it ran for like 5 or 6 seasons, I believe. And it was fun TV to watch. You know, when you're a kid like me, when this show was out, I was between the ages of like 3 and 6, I want to say. I enjoyed it. It was like a great piece of television to watch, you know. And during that time, there was a lot of fun television to watch. There was Knight Rider and the A-Team, Airwolf. And of course, there were the reruns of a lot of other things too. But what a lot of people don't realize is that this is a take on that TV show. And they do kind of pay homage to it too. And I'll get into that later on too. But overall, I think this is a really badass, fun, entertaining movie from start to finish. The pacing is so frenetic. It's really fast. It's nonstop sometimes, and it kind of keeps you at the edge of your seat most of the time, you know, because you have a lot of things going on, and sometimes, especially during like a lot of the action moments, you have multiple action moments happening at the same time. Plus, you may even have some like dramatic kind of moment that's intertwined while all of these things are happening. And they keep cutting back and forth between all the different instances, right? The only time this movie really slows down is whenever you have one-on-one moments with Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, who I will say have really fantastic chemistry on the big screen. I mean, they're both great actors. Like I said, Ryan Gosling has the perfect persona, the perfect type of swagger to him to pull off a role like this, especially coming out of like a movie like Barbie. It had a lot of Kenergy, if I'm to be so bold in saying so. But I felt like a lot of the Kenergy that he had in Barbie, it kind of spilled over a little bit into this movie as well. But that's just Ryan Gosling for you, you know. And Emily Blunt has always been a favorite actress of mine for a long time, and she really holds herself true to her type of character too and personality, especially when you see her like doing interviews and whenever you see her and her husband John Krasinski when they do like when they talk to each other, very playful, but also can be very serious and can even hold her own when it comes to some action moments as well. Brilliant job and brilliant performance between the two of them. The chemistry is on point. The movie and the dialogue, especially some of the moments, are also very meta. Where at certain times the movie felt like it's like a movie within a movie while they're making a movie. If that makes any sense, or maybe that's going to be extremely confusing to a lot of you. But it was a lot of that happening, where obviously they're making a movie, but then they'll have a conversation about the movie they're making, and they'll call out certain movie tropes that happens. Like there was a conversation about them and they're trying to work out the ending. And then they say, hey, I'm thinking about how about we do a split screen? And they're like, oh, split screen sounds brilliant. And then within the movie itself, you see there's a split screen where you have Emily Blunt in one location talking on the phone with Ryan Gosling, who's in another location. So as they're talking about utilizing split screen in the movie they're making, the movie itself has them in a split screen formatted situation. And it's just so crazy and just fun meta that they're doing back and forth there. You can also tell director David Leitch, they really paid homage and a tribute to stunt people out there. You can tell because David Leitch was a stunt person too. I don't know if he still does it, but you could tell that there's so much passion and love when it comes to the action scenes that he really put a lot of focus and attention in some of these elaborate stunt scenes that they've done in the movie itself. Where some of these action moments, they take a while. Like there's a moment where there's a major car chase scene going on, and this happens for a good amount of time. And this is one of those moments where I was saying, like, you had three different scenarios happening at the same time, and we keep cutting back and forth between all of these different types of moments. Some of the fight scenes are very elaborate and very stunty like. I felt like it was like a lot of not just John Wick, because I feel like that's such an easy cop out or easy comparison to say like, oh, this reminds me of John Wick. Everything reminds people of John Wick. But it reminded me of like moments like stuff you've seen from like Mission Impossible or Scott Pilgrim. There was this one particular fight scene that happened in a club where it really felt like Scott Pilgrim to me. Because they had like extra animation or special effects on the people around them. Because during this moment, Ryan Gosling's character is kind of drugged. So he sees everything kind of blurry or just very brightly colored and animated. And he gets into a fight. And as he's fighting, you could see like streaks happening or bams happening, not the words coming out, but just like the kind of effects that you would see like in comic books. It felt like very Scott Pilgrim to me. And again, if you watch Scott Pilgrim versus the World, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It made me wonder, like, if this guy actually worked on any of the stunt and fight scenes in Scott Pilgrim, but it doesn't look like it. David Leitch worked a lot on Deadpool, Atomic Blonde, Fast and Furious. And you could tell, like, within this movie, they pay a lot of tribute to those movies as well, especially Fast and Furious, because that is a Universal Pictures film, right? And this is done by Universal Pictures. There's this great kind of bond and friendship that Ryan Gosling's character has with what's his name? Hold on, I'm just looking at Winston Duke, who Winston Duke plays kind of like a stunt coordinator, and they have this special kind of friendship between each other. And there's a moment where they get into a fight with some of these other guys, And every time Winston Duke does some sort of like fight thing, whether it's like throwing someone here or kind of punching someone there, he kind of recites the action like he recalls a moment from like a movie or an actor as if he's mimicking that actor doing an action scene. Like there's one thing where he picks someone up and tosses them behind him over a kitchen counter, and he's like, "Dwayne the Rock Johnson." And he goes, and he was doing this during the whole time as he's kind of calling out like the influences, I guess, right, from a lot of these fight moments. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, a lot of fun, and on the romantic side of things, there's just this thing that Ryan Gosling does where he could just like look at you, and I could already hear like the women kind of like falling over him. You know, I could feel the women kind of like do like one of those things. And you know, Emily Blunt, they have like a great back and forth with each other, very playful, and it's sweet. You know, the romance between the two is very sweet, and it's not anything that I would say is overly over the top or out of reality. I can see this happening between two people, you know, especially if they work within the movie industry. And you know, they do a lot of these inside jokes for those who are familiar with working on a movie set or working within the movie industry. They had Hannah Waddingham from Ted Lasso playing an executive producer, and there's a lot of things that she says in there that's very Hollywood. You know, and I'm just basing this off of like documentaries I've seen or behind the scenes stuff that I've watched. It's very much that type of kind of personality. So it is really funny. Stephanie Sue is in this movie too, and she has like this little tiny role where she's like an assistant, a personal assistant to Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, and she gets involved in some action moments too. And I'm just like, everyone is getting their moments in this movie, having some action stuff, and she did a really great job. And it was just nice because I feel like it's been a while since we've seen her too, and it was just nice to kind of see her again on the big screen there. And Aaron Taylor Johnson, he's obviously the big, well, I guess not obviously, but he is the main actor to Ryan Gosling, who is his stunt double, right? And Aaron Taylor Johnson has that very typical, he plays this character that is like a very typical egomaniac Hollywood star who is just, who thinks their shit don't stink, right? And there's a lot of these moments where he's just so full of himself, but at the same time, like he doesn't want to get his hands dirty at all. So whenever he gets pressure to doing something, he kind of freaks out. He's like, wait a minute, I'm getting a little dizzy. Or Ryan, come here, like, you know, Colt, I guess that's Ryan's name. You know, this is why we pay you. You do this. You and do it better, will you? And at the same time, don't show your face too much because, you know, your face obviously doesn't look like mine, and I want there to be some sort of level of believability. So it was just a lot of funny back and forth between everybody involved. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, there are some moments within the film I think people, and I can kind of feel it from the audience, where I felt like it was dragging just a little bit. Also, directing wise too, they do this thing, which is kind of slightly a pet peeve of mine, where David Leitch lingers on a bit too long on a certain shot or a certain scene. It's a very European way of filming, where we're just stuck on either Emily Blunt's face or Ryan Gosling's face, and the conversation already ended. But then we're still lingering there in that one particular moment. So that was something that I would say that is a little bit annoying at times and can cause to moments of the movie feeling like it is dragging. And most of this happens like in the middle of the movie. But and the movie also has kind of like a fake out ending where you think it's gonna end or it's about to end, and then they just throw something else at you. And we're like, oh, we're still in this. We're going forward. Okay, so yeah, and the ending itself was a full blown stunt extravaganza. If you've ever been to like Universal Studios or maybe uh was it Hollywood Studios in Disney. You know, whenever they have like one of those like stunt shows, the stunt spectaculars, like the Indiana Jones stunt show, or at Universal at one point they had the Waterworld stunt show. If you have ever attended one of those things while you were there, you know how they always have like this one big major stunt moment at the end of the show where they just everything that they talked about or everything that they kind of went through, it all accumulates and happens in this one finale. And this movie definitely has one of those moments at the end. So like I said, like you could really feel that David Leitch wanted to really truly highlight a lot of these action sets and a lot of these stunt moments, these major stunt moments, to really, really pay tribute and homage to the stunt community. And there's even a moment within the movie where Ryan Gosling's character is talking to somebody, and he said, "Yeah, I just did this thing, I did a roll over, a car roll." Like, oh my God, car roll! Oh, what? Yeah, blah blah blah. And then he brings up Oscars, right? It's like, have you been nominated for an Oscar? I mean, they kind of pay attention to you guys, right? And Ryan Gosling's character is kind of like, no, there is no category for stunt people in the Oscars. And that was also one of the moments where they kind of linger in that particular moment. After he says it, they linger, and there's like silence after that before the other guy chimes in again. So I feel like that was done very purposefully and intentionally, to kind of be kind of like a wink wink to the audience, and not only that, but maybe to Hollywood itself, be like, hey, you know this is something that we've been kind of pushing for a while now, and maybe it's time to give stunt people their due. So yeah, I would say like it's quite an enjoyable film. I think it has a lot for everybody. If you are someone who's going to this wanting just to see Ryan Gosling, then you're definitely not going to be disappointed. I feel like Ryan Gosling does all the Ryan Gosling stuff in this movie, and you will totally love it. If you're someone who loves action and kind of like great action moments, then you're going to get a lot of that here too. If you're someone going into this hoping that it's like kind of like a rom-com or a romance thing, you do get that. You do get moments of that for sure. But I do feel like a lot of it is not forced, but it is kind of, I'll just say it like this. I feel like the romantic parts, even though a lot of them were done very well, and like I said, the chemistry between the two are very believable. A lot of the times I feel like it kind of interfered with, no, I kind of just want to see what's going to happen when this guy chases that guy, or when this guy tries to fight this guy. I feel like a lot of these times and those romantic moments kind of sneak in there as you're kind of anticipating a big action moment or a big conflict, right? Because in a way, it's like the movie's reminding you, oh, by the way, these two, they really care about each other. Or I should say, Ryan Gosling's character is such a softie when it comes to Emily Blunt's character, that a lot of his motivation is mainly because he just wants to get back with her, from the time that he kind of prevented a lot of that stuff from happening. And there's a lot of callbacks to a lot of different movies, especially like a lot of the action movies. Again, Winston Duke, him and Winston Duke, they always have this moment where they kind of quote something while they're trying to like hype each other up. So Winston Duke will say a quote from a movie, and you see Ryan Gosling will say, "Last of the Mohicans." It's like, "Yeah, motherfucker, let's go." So that's like a way that they kind of hype each other up as they're doing all that stuff. So it's a lot of like I said, a lot of fun moments, a nice little tribute to stunt people and Hollywood in general, really, and the art of filmmaking. At the end of the movie during the credits, they kind of have one of those like reels where they show you all the stunts and the behind the scenes moments of the stunts, which I feel like we don't get enough of that anymore during end credits. One of the things I always love, especially watching a lot of the Jackie Chan movies back in the day, was that he always had like those reels of moments of stunts, especially when it goes wrong. They have a lot of those moments as a kind of like, oh, here are some behind the scenes of some of these action moments that we've had throughout the film. So they definitely had a good amount of that during the end credits there, which I thought was really, 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 really cool. But yeah, no, I really thoroughly enjoyed this. I haven't had a chance to kind of log this into Letterboxd yet, but I will say I will easily give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I could see myself watching this movie again and multiple times. It's a great movie to also have like running in the background. And this is like no knock on the movie. It's just a fun thing to just have running. And I think it's also just a great time in the movie theater if you are planning to watch this in the movie theater, because a lot of the stunts and a lot of the action scenes are well worth watching it on the big screen. Yeah, especially with the sound and all that. But I really really enjoyed it, and I'm very curious as to what the reception is going to be like out there for those who are planning to watch it this weekend. As far as box office is concerned, I mean, I'm guessing with the fan base that Ryan Gosling has, and of course he's coming out of Barbie last year, so I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who are excited and anticipating what he's going to do next after Barbie, and this is the first movie that he's going to be in since then. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are going to go out there and watch it for him. Maybe more so than supporting Zendaya, which kind of surprised me that movie didn't make more than it should have been. But it's also the type of movie, right? This is a fun time at the theater. This is an action-packed movie. You have your romance, you have your crazy stunts. So you have a little bit for everybody. So I feel like a movie like this is a little bit more open and welcoming to a more general audience. So I do think like maybe this movie this weekend will probably do like 30 to 35 million. I won't be surprised if it does like around that much. If it does more than that, awesome. Well deserved in my opinion. If it does less than that, that's concerning. That means something didn't go right with the marketing here, and they are marketing this movie like crazy. There's a lot of YouTube videos. There's a lot of interviews during the red carpet. They had stunt guys doing crazy things on the red carpet and in the theater during the red carpet. You had Ryan Gosling, who was on SNL. Even on the red carpet, he showed up as his Beavis character when they did the Beavis and Butthead skit. So they are really all in on a lot of the marketing for this movie. So I really hope it does well, and I think it. You deserve it to watch it. You owe it to yourself to watch this, because it's going to be a fun time. I think you're going to really thoroughly enjoy it. As far as like talking about more in-depth stuff about the movie, as I talk about spoilers and all that kind of stuff, there's an interesting thing that they do here. Like I said, that the trailer alludes to, but it's a smokescreen. In the trailer, you're kind of assuming that Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, who is the main movie star that Ryan Gosling does the stunt, who's the stunt double for, that he is the guy that dies in the movie. And Ryan Gosling's character is now tasked to find out why that happened. But there's a major twist in there that obviously they were hoping to save it for the movie so that when people see it, they get surprised. The person who's dead in the bathtub is another stunt double. And Ryan Gosling is now forced to find out why is this stunt guy in the bathtub, right? And they're still and Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, who plays the character name is Tom Ryder. He's missing. He's nowhere to be found. So that's like the big mystery. Is like, where is he? And what's happening here? So that was like an interesting twist, but it's also like an interesting thing that they did with the Ryan Gosling character of Colt Seavers, where in the beginning he does a lot of narration. He does narration at the beginning of the movie, and he does narration towards the end of the movie. And he gives a narration at the beginning of the movie that's talking about stunt work and the stunt community and action scenes in movies. And you get a lot of these scenes from like Atomic Blonde and Fast and Furious, again, Universal type movies, right? And they're paying homage to stunt people. So Ryan Gosling is on set, and he has to redo a stunt. And I have to also call this out too. There are a lot of moments, particularly in that beginning, where everything seems like a one shot. The way they filmed this movie. Think of all of the cool filming techniques that you've seen in action movies, and you all combine it into one movie. I feel like this movie did a lot of that. We even have the very cliche and typical Michael Bay going around in the circle when you have two people there. They did this even when it wasn't even an action moment. It's just Ryan Gosling and Winston Duke's character talking, and you can see the camera spinning around them, from below. Very Michael Bay, very Bad Boys like. So a lot of moments in the beginning were kind of like one takes, right? Where you're following Ryan Gosling's character, walking from here to there, going from one part of the set to another part of the set. You're just following him through the whole time. And then they do this something similar too with Emily Blunt's character later on. So I loved how they did a lot of that stuff. So in the beginning of the movie, he is supposed to repeat a stunt because his face was showing too much during the last time they took. And Aaron Taylor Johnson is like a little bit too much of an egomaniac. It's like, no. We need to redo it because he's looking too much. We see too much of his face, and he doesn't look anything like me. And no offense. But, I don't want people to think, have them taken out of the movie, blah, blah, blah. So he does the stunt, and then this is where the accident happens. He ends up breaking his back, and he's out of the game for like over a year. I believe they said like 16 months or something like that. So what happened during this time is that while he was recovering, his little thing that he had with Emily Blunt fell apart because he himself did not want to deal with her in the state that he's in when he was recovering. So in a way, he's kind of like ashamed that he's like a lesser man that she knew. So he didn't want to like show her his vulnerability as he's recovering in the hospital and all that. And it sounds like she really wanted to be there for him, but he prevented it from happening. So not only is he out of a relationship or out of this thing, but he's also out of work because he ends up getting a job as like a parking attendant and all that stuff. Then the producer, played by Hannah Wingham, or Waddingham, sorry, calls him out of the blue and says, hey, guess what? Jodie, that's Emily Blunt's character, really wants you back for this movie that she's working on. And guess what? She's a director now. Because when they last spoke to each other, she was just like a kind of like a director of cinematography, like that. What's going on, Coral Cat Official? What's going on? Good evening or good morning. I don't know where you're hailing from. So he's like, oh, really? She wants me back? So he sees this as an opportunity to not only get back into stunt work, but hoping to get back and maybe rekindle their relationship that they had. But of course, all of this was done without Jodie's knowledge. When Jodie found out that Colt is there, she is taken aback. And secretly, a lot of these things were being set up because the reason why Gail, who is the executive producer, wanted Ryan Gosling's character back is because she needed help. Because Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, Tom Ryder, is missing. So she's asking help from Colt to figure out why that is. So of course he goes on this like little hunt to see where he is. He's being told to talk to this guy and talk to that guy. And it becomes a little like, cat and mouse kind of situation. Finds a dead body in the hotel room, kind of freaks out. And then later on, we all find that this was an elaborate kind of ruse. That Aaron Taylor Johnson's character has such pride and such an ego that during a party, he was kind of teased about him doing his own stunts, which he doesn't do. And he's like, I guess they get into this moment where it's like, I'll show you. And we see this through kind of video footage that was taken on his phone, which is like a major point of contention because everyone is now searching for this phone because it has the evidence of his character accidentally killing his stunt double in this party because he's so proud and showing that he could do these stunts, kicks him, and the dude accidentally lands on his head and basically dies right there. So it becomes this elaborate thing where now he's trying to hide the evidence. And he's asking for his, producer, Gail, to help out. So they come up with this really crazy idea that I know what to do. I'll get Ryan Gosling's character to come back and we'll frame him. So basically, it's like he gets back on set. She asks him to help her find this guy. Put the dead body on ice in the bathtub in the hotel room, go in there, have security footage of him going in and out of the hotel room. And then they're going to deep fake his image onto Aaron Taylor Johnson's body in the video on his cell phone so that it really looks like it's Ryan Gosling's character who accidentally killed this guy and is on the run like that. And the way they explain the whole deepfake situation is because when Ryan gets on set for the first time, they scan his entire body and his face. And the excuse was, yeah, it's this new technology that we do nowadays for, all of these stunt work because we want to impose that real actor's face onto the stunt person so it really looks like they are doing the stunt. Which again, if you're familiar with special effects and movies, this is done a lot nowadays. This has been going on for some time now. They even did this like in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I remember. So it's an elaborate whole thing for them to do all that. And then you have Aaron Taylor Johnson's like kind of bodyguards looking for this phone and will stop at nothing to find this phone, even to the point where they're willing to kind of quote unquote take people out to do so. So it's just a crazy, crazy scheme that they have going on that has Ryan Gosling involved in it all. And of course, Jodie has no knowledge that any of this is happening. And that's where a lot of the hijinks ensues. And it's just so much fun seeing them go through a lot of these crazy moments. Like, for example, like I mentioned, the club scene, as he's talking to the drug dealer, the drug dealer kind of spikes his drink. He gets all bananas and he's fighting now people in the club. They drugged him on purpose so that they could kind of lead him into the hotel room. They do this funny thing where, Ryan Gosling's character is like asking, all right, I know you drugged me, but how long is this going to take? It's like, well, the moment you stop seeing a unicorn, then you know that you're in the clear. And then there's running gag where everywhere he goes, there's a unicorn just hanging out. So it kind of gives you that illusion that, okay, Ryan Gosling is still fucked up. He's still like kind of drugged and all that. What's going on? I'm him, number 11. Good evening, and hope you are having a good one, or good morning, or good afternoon. I don't know where you're hailing from. So you have those moments, and then like as he's trying to sneak into Aaron Taylor Johnson's apartment, he has a run-in with another co-star who's also kind of like a stunt woman, and they have this elaborate back and forth, fighting each other. What's going on, Aura Blah? Ontario? Are you hailing from Ontario? I've never been, but I have been to Toronto. What's going on? Hope you're having a good evening. So yeah, so it was just, you could tell that it also kind of feels like, again, David Leitch is a former stunt guy. So you could tell like he spent a lot of time formulating these stunt moments in these action scenes within this movie. And he wanted to make them as elaborate as possible. And the payoff at the end is just brilliant. It's just really brilliant. The first stunt we see, or the first moment we see, obviously, is Ryan Gosling falling down, like doing a free fall. That's where he gets into his accident. We have, when he's coming back, the first thing that he does is that he's doing this elaborate car chase on the beach where he is supposed to do a car roll. And the car rolls like 8 times, which is like a crazy amounts of time. I think that was like a record or something like that. It also kind of reminded me if I don't know if you ever remember, there's this video game back in the day called Stuntman or Stunt Driver. I used to love that game. I used to play that game all the time. And it reminded me a lot of that because we are following his character in the car, and you're hearing on like kind of the walkie-talkie, you say, okay, we're gonna have this go off, that go off. All right, turn left, move over here, get closer to the camera. And I remember when you were playing this video game, it was giving you a lot of those same prompts too. So I was like, all right, this is pretty dope. And then when he's about to do his roll, he hits the button that kind of like ignites the explosion that kind of flips the car and does all that stuff. Again, very elaborate, very stuntman like. And you could tell like only someone who is involved in those type of moments and situations that they would have such passion in writing a scene like that. So I thought that was done very, very well. Then we have obviously a lot of fight scenes, and Winston Duke and Gosling. They have like these great fight moments. They introduced this dog, who is also a stunt dog. That they have like a friendship now between Gosling and this dog, and the dog only speaks French. So every time Gosling tells the dog to do something, he tells the dog to do it in French, which is really hilarious, and it's so funny. The car chase scene I alluded to earlier, my God, the amount of work that they did and they put into this car chase scene, and a lot of it, and everything that's involved in it is insane. It's a dumpster truck that has like a dumpster like in the back. You have Stephanie Sue, her character in the front with the driver and the passenger. And you have Ryan Gosling who's trying to chase him down in his own car with the dog in tow, right? So you have this chase going on. At the same time, you have Emily Blunt who is singing karaoke, hoping that Ryan is going to show up. She's being told that he's not, that he left. Because again, the producer, Gail, told him to leave because it's all part of the plan, right? It's all part of the setup. And again, these bad guys are the bodyguards of Aaron Taylor Johnson, and they want to get the cell phone because it has the evidence on there, which Stephanie has. And that's why Stephanie and Ryan Gosling met, because they know about this phone and they need this phone. So you have this chase that's ensuing through what I forget where they are, but all throughout the streets. Then Ryan Gosling ends up jumping from his car into their truck. You have the dog that jumps onto the truck as well, trying to help out. You have the dumpster that then now falls behind the truck and is like latched on to this truck. So now you have Gosling and a guy fighting in the dumpster as it's being dragged by this truck. You have the dog that's trying to attack the guys in the cab, and all of these crazy things that are happening. And while all this is happening, we're still cutting back and forth to Emily Blunt singing a Phil Collins song in the karaoke. It's just such frantic pacing back and forth. And of course, the stunts were brilliantly done and were so much fun to watch. But it was so cool, those moments there. And the ending. Oh my God, the ending. As they're trying to film like this climactic ending to this movie, you have so much stuff going on. An elaborate like fight choreography with like these aliens that are kind of like, it's like a science fiction movie, very much like Dune. Even they have like a soundtrack that sounds like Dune, you know, "Ah, yeah, 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 yeah," you know, which they kind of parody in a way. Um, and because of what happened with Aaron Taylor Johnson's character and the whole setup, they tried to kill Gosling's character. They think he's dead. He comes back. He tells Emily Blunt the whole thing. They now try to set up this guy by forcing him to do his own stunt by accident. And it's like 20 minutes of such an insane, crazy stunt moment. You know, where you have explosions everywhere. This car's driving all over the place, jumping over kind of like a ravine and all of this stuff happening. Then you thought the movie was going to end right there. Then something else happens. Now you have a helicopter chase going on. You have Gosling's character hopping onto the helicopter, trying to get the evidence that Aaron Taylor Johnson now has, and all this stuff. It is just bonkers, bonkers back and forth. And honestly, it's just a lot of fun, a lot of fun. And then at the very end, we get this like kind of like a nice closeout and finale, you know, because the whole running joke too was that Emily Blunt is working on such a huge blockbuster movie that it's going to be at Comic-Con, Hall H, major production. So we see Hall H. She's presenting like a trailer of the movie. Everyone's going nuts. They recast Aaron Taylor Johnson with Jason Momoa. So now Jason Momoa is in the movie as the star, which is really hilarious in itself. And then when you think that's done, then there's like a post-credit scene or whatever you want to call it, where we see the producer, Gail, Aaron Taylor Johnson, their helicopter crash, so they're just coming out of it. And then you see like the on-set police coming over to kind of take them in. And who shows up? Lee fucking Majors, son. That's right. Lee Majors has a cameo in this movie. And I believe that was Heather Thomas with him, alongside with him there too. And he has this moment where it's just like, yeah, you know, you're going away, this and that. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson does this funny thing where he's like, I got my phone. I'm going to call my agent or whatever like that. He accidentally walks into like this pyrotechnics area, blows up. And then Lee Majors has the one final line. And he's like, actors. You know, I just like, oh my God, that's so funny. So I love the fact that Lee Majors made a nice cameo in this movie that is an homage to the original TV show, The Fall Guy. And yeah, it was just, it's just insanity. And I feel like I'm just going off on like tangent after tangent here and all that. But the movie itself is really just a lot of fun. It really is. And it's like really a blast I had a good time watching it. Let's just say it like that. And I think a lot of people will be having a good time watching this movie. There's also, I have to call this out too, the first time that Emily Blunt's character and Ryan Gosling's character has a chance to talk, they kind of do it on set, where he's doing this one particular stunt where he's on fire and he's in an explosion and he smashes against a rock. And she's still very sour about how their relationship ended before. So she's like, oh, we need to redo that because there was like a hitch in the film. And they keep redoing that whole scene over and over again. And then she kind of goes into this monologue about, let me tell you and give you some motivation about your character here. And talks about kind of the romance within the movie while she's really secretly talking about her own feelings and how she felt about him and how he treated her. And then he has a moment to kind of retort also. It was just a really funny back and forth thing that's done out in the public. And you have all the extras there kind of like listening along. Sometimes they're agreeing or sometimes they're nodding. This one other guy who's like in this alien outfit. It's like, yeah, it reminds me of this time when I got involved with the sister of my ex-girlfriend. And you're like, no, 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 no. No. Don't even don't start that. It's just a lot of those kind of like chuckle moments, laugh out loud moments that happened through this movie. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It is definitely a fun time. And I'm very curious as to what the reception is going to be like for a lot of people. Those who were in the screening today, as they were leaving, you could tell that they had a good time. You could tell that they had a good time. A lot of great homages to, like, they did a thing about Miami Vice in there too, because there was a moment where they were in the ocean on boats, or maybe it was like a harbor scene. Yeah, that's when Gosling's character kind of died, quote unquote, died. And he was wearing like a Miami Vice stunt show jacket because that was his first gig that he was part of that stunt show. So if you're a fan of like just action movies in general, especially like action TV from back in the day, if you remember in the 80s, we got a lot of action television. We had Knight Rider, we had A-Team. Again, like I said, The Fall Guy, Million Dollar Man, Million Dollar Woman, Airwolf. There were a lot of action-heavy TV shows back in the day. And I do feel like that this movie kind of pays homage a lot to those type of shows, too. We don't get a lot of TV like that anymore. So it was just a fun ride from beginning to end. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it, yeah. So yeah. That is The Fall Guy. Ryan Gosling's The Fall Guy there. So I am definitely curious as to what everyone's going to think about this movie. So definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments if you're watching live or if you're watching on the replay. Would love to hear all your thoughts about that. Next thing I wanted to talk about here too is before the movie started, before Fall Guy, like I said, I got to the theater early because I found out that they were still showing Alien on the big screen. Now, Alien is celebrating its 45th anniversary. It came out in 1979. So it came out a year after I was born. So I never had a chance to watch this movie in the theaters. But it is by far one of the classic sci-fi movies out there. But it's not just a sci-fi movie. It's also a horror movie. That's one of the things I really love and appreciate about Alien. But it's interesting too because when I first saw anything from the Alien franchise, I saw the second one first, Aliens, the movie directed by James Cameron, which was definitely more action-packed, more action-based science fiction movie. I was first introduced to the whole world through that movie. Then after I saw that, then I went back to watch the original Alien. And that's even when I realized too, back then, how different both movies are, right? But obviously Alien is the one that started it all by the great director Ridley Scott. And I just thought, hey, I have to watch this on the big screen. I have to go out, It's the 45th anniversary. I never had a chance to see this in the theaters. Now's a great time to do so. And it looks fully remastered visually and sound-wise too. Before the movie started, there was a nice little Q&A between Fede Alvarez, who's directing the new Alien movie that's coming out this year. I think it's called Romulus, Alien Romulus, between him and Ridley Scott. And they kind of had like a nice Q&A about the original Alien movie. And there were certain things that were revealed about the movie that I didn't even know, which I thought was really, really fascinating. One thing was Ridley Scott said, like, since they weren't working with like a huge budget and they didn't have the same kind of technology like George Lucas had, when it comes to special effects, a lot of the models or the sets, they had to build it smaller than they were hoping. So especially like the derelict ship on the planet that the team kind of goes out and kind of searches, and that's when the face hugger attacks the guy for the first time and all that stuff. So in order to not give away how small of a model this was, what Ridley Scott did was that he had a camera on it, and then he had a monitor. And what he did is that he filmed the monitor and how it looked like through the monitor to give us kind of like that um, old school CRT kind of look of it, as the point of view of the people who are there walking their way towards it, to kind of give it like that ominous look, that kind of like, wow, this thing is so huge and grand and very foreign. We've never seen such a thing like this before. That's how he was able to achieve that. Then there was another thing that he talked about that I had no idea about either, is that the live set outside of the ship, since they couldn't build it so big, in order to kind of give it more size, he had his own kids playing the astronauts, playing these guys going into the ship. So when you see the movie and you see outside of the ship and you see like the three guys like kind of crawling into the ship, going into the ship, those are played by kids. And I had no idea about that. And I thought that was really fascinating. And I think it's not just that moment too. I feel like every time we have like a huge wide shot and they're trying to give scale, give the audience a sense of scale of how big this thing is and how tiny the guys look like when they're walking around the ship or inside the ship. I have a feeling each of those moments they had the kids in the suits walking around whenever there was a major wide shot. So those type of things that they talked about was so fascinating to me. I thought it was just really, really fascinating and interesting to learn. Because not it's nice to kind of walk away from it, not only having a chance to see it in the theater for the first time on the big screen, but to walk away with something that I didn't know about going into it. And I've known this movie for a very long time. I've watched this movie multiple times. And watching it in the theater is very, very, it's for a movie that's 45 years old, it doesn't feel dated at all. Yeah. And that was one of the things that Fede Alvarez was talking about Ridley Scott. And it's like, somehow Ridley Scott and the people he worked with knew how to work on the aesthetics of this movie and do it in a way that 45 years later, it still looks very believable and it doesn't feel dated at all. Like the interiors of the ship look really good and believable and not like of a certain time period. Obviously, the alien design by Geiger or Giger, I forget which one, how you pronounce it, H.R. Geiger, Giger. That's a timeless kind of design for the alien, especially like everything within the derelict ship too, like the corridors and the fossilized kind of pilot, like all of that is just done in a way and in an aesthetic that doesn't look like it's stuck in a time period. And he really said that he took a lot of inspiration from 2001 and what Kubrick did in that movie. Like, even though a lot of the interiors feel like it's part of a time in the 70s, like kind of like that old space age look to it, it still looks great today when you watch it and very believable. It doesn't feel dated. And he wanted to kind of achieve that same look when it comes to Alien. And he did. Watching this on the big screen now, it looks great. And it looks fantastic. And hearing the soundtrack, the Jerry Goldsmith soundtrack, and the sound effects in a big theater setting really gave me another chance to experience this movie in a way that I haven't had a chance to experience before. And that's in the theater, the way, any director intends a person to watch their film in or experience their movies in. is in that kind of big theater setting, with the big screen and the great sound system, and everything just made it like during the countdown, the sound was so blaring and so like intense that I even though I've seen this movie over and over again, multiple times before, I still felt anxiety as Ripley is trying to figure out how to get into the getaway ship. And then seeing the aliens right there around the corner, and she's like, "Oh my god, I gotta go back and stop this countdown," and failing to do so. Or every time the alien attacked someone, how sometimes the sound effects aren't even audible at all. Like you could see someone screaming, but you don't hear them screaming because the soundtrack is taking over. Or you hear just the aliens' noises over the humans that are kind of experiencing what's happening to them. It was just very, very fascinating to hear how the sound played such a huge part of that movie too. But it's easy not to realize it when you watch it at home. Because not a lot of people have great sound systems to experience movies like that. But to see it in the theater is a whole different experience. I will say this, though. That damn cat is a freaking bastard. That cat has gotten so many people in trouble and led to many people's deaths that he's a little shit, he because of him running away, he had that one dude die. Harry Dean Stanton's character. I love Harry Dean Stanton because I always remember him as the father of Molly Ringwald in Pretty in Pink. He led him to his death, and almost got Ripley killed at the end because of his damn hijinks. It's also very interesting to like kind of put yourself in that moment where Sigourney Weaver was not a big star yet at that time. That Ridley kind of said that even though he worked with kind of an established cast, the only big name in that cast was Tom Skerritt at that moment. Of course, Tom Skerritt, you wouldn't know him and recognize him from like movies like Top Gun, amongst other stuff in the 80s. But during that time, Tom Skerritt was the only real big name in the entire production. But look what happened. Look how big of a star Sigourney Weaver became because of that role. Harry Dean Stanton went on to do so many other things in the 80s and all throughout the 80s. Ian Holm, who played the android, Ash, which, again, when you watch the movie, you forget that no one knew that this dude was an android. That was kind of like a plant from the company. Because the company was in on it during the whole time. Of course, Ian Holm later on would later become Bilbo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? So, very, very fascinating stuff when you have a chance again to just watch everything for the first time on the big screen. It gives you another appreciation for the movie. This upcoming weekend, as we're approaching May 4th, Star Wars Day, May the 4th be with you, we're also this year celebrating the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace. So I'm planning on watching it myself because it's been a very long time since I've seen The Phantom Menace on the big screen. And I'm curious to see how it would look like today, as I'm an older gentleman and not someone back in 1999 seeing it for the first time, looking at it with very naive and younger eyes, just hoping for a good Star Wars movie. What's going on? I don't know how to pronounce your name, and I don't want to mess it up. Is it Fook? Or whatever? Or the other way? Well, what's going on? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for tuning in. But yeah, Alien is such a great movie, and it's just really really great to see it on the big screen, and have that moment to catch it. And it's phenomenal to think that it's 45 years since it first came out, and like I said, it still holds strong. It's still very watchable, and it's still very enjoyable. Such a great movie. All right, I am going to take a sip of some water because I've been talking nonstop for a very long time. I hope everyone's having a good evening. Obviously, as you're coming in and out, it would be great if y'all can hit that like button. That would be awesome and amazing. And of course, I would definitely deeply appreciate it. Also, like I said too, like there are two formats going on right now. Obviously, for those of you watching vertical format, maybe this is something that you like to watch in this way. But there's also, I have the regular, full on, full screen, horizontal way too. Um, Either way, however you want to enjoy this content. Greatly appreciate it. All right, who's watching X-Men 97? I am having, I continue to have such a great time with this show. And, obviously it's Wednesday, like I mentioned. Wait, hold on one second, guys. I'm just checking something on my phone. On my phone. All right. But yeah, X-Men 97. So it's Wednesday, so we have a brand new episode. Episode 8 is out now on Disney Plus. Hold on. X-Men. X-Men, X-Men saves the day. Coming your way. Who remembers that? Can I play a song? I cannot. Because, well, I could play a non-copyrighted song if you'd like. Yeah, how about I do that? Hold on. Yeah. Songs on streams are, especially if it's copyrighted, I can't play those because I will get flagged. And unfortunately, that's a big no-no on the YouTube. So yeah, but I can play this if you can hear it. I hope you can hear it. And hopefully it's not like too overbearing over my voice as I'm talking. All right. Well, I'm just adjusting some levels on my end. Sorry, guys. I don't intend for the dead air. I do apologize for that. How's everyone doing tonight? You all good? Let me know. But yeah, let's talk about X-Men 97 episode 8. So this is a part 1 of what looks to be a 3-parter as we close out this season. And it's a very interesting way to start things up and set things up because of what we experienced from the previous episode. Beck's World, what's going on? Shout out. Who are you shouting out? But yeah, the way we left episode 7 was we were revealed or introduced to unknown characters to some people. and this really purple kind of um, evil looking guy who has a lot of evil intentions, who appears to be kind of not working with Mr. Sinister, but Mr. Sinister is actually working for him, right? Which is kind of like, I guess, one of the big surprises when this person was revealed. I'm also going to put spoilers up here, just in case anyone doesn't want to hear spoilers for X-Men 97 Episode 8. But it was interesting because if you don't read the comic books, then you would be wondering, who is this guy? And why is he such a big threat? Or why is, Mr. Sinister almost to a certain point afraid of him, but not quite? And if you were like me, because I did follow the comic books to a certain point, I feel like this was getting into a moment where I already was kind of like out of the loop. So I had to look it up, and then we found that there's this character named Bastion. And the whole idea behind Bastion's existence is obviously he hates mutants, and he's coming up with like kind of this like hybrid human / sentinel hybrid, turning people into like human androids, right? So it seems to be the overall plot here now for the ending of this season is that Bastion is hell-bent on not just getting rid of mutants, but making the world kind of be slaves to him, or kind of like this human hybrids of what they currently are now, to kind of create a better society worldwide in a way. And I hope I'm explaining that well enough. But as this episode goes on, as we start to learn more and more about what's happening, because now Cable is in the present, and Cable and Scott are, they're having a rough time. Father and son haven't seen each other in a minute. They're not, things aren't going so well just of yet. We know now that when Bishop got Nathan as a baby, and when they went back into the future, they were kind of separated, because there was a whole question about, well, where's Bishop now? Bishop was supposed to be with Cable or with Nathan, and it sounds like something caused them to kind of separate as they were going through their rift and all. And Cable was able to fully explain who Bastion is, what Bastion did that led the future to change drastically. And essentially what it sounds like is that he turned mutants into slaves, and these mutants are now working for humans to kind of create this utopia. And a lot of the humans turned into kind of these like human android mutations, hybrids. So it's funny that someone who is against mutants is turning people into kind of his own mutated thing, right? So a mutant's a mutant's a mutant, right? Mutation's a mutation. And it sounds like Bastion is working with all of the kind of evil sectors in the world. Because there's this moment where he's in a room and he has all these monitors going on, and he's talking to like an underground society of bad people or whatever. But then you see Dr. Doom in one of the screens, and he's talking to Dr. Doom. And then you see Baron Zemo in another screen, and he's talking to Baron Zemo. Zemo in his original comic book face hood, and the crazy headband and all that. So he's really like rallying the troops here, rallying all the villains, all the bad guys to be on board with him and all. But at the same time, you could also tell that Sinister just doesn't like working with this dude. So he's hoping that he could find kind of an entry and a way to take back control which is something that he's always wanted to do. So he's just following along just to play nice, and then he's looking for this way or this window for him to like really have his moment. But it turns out because of everything that Bastion did, it makes the future so different and so bad for mutants in general. And there's this moment where Wolverine blows up, and he's like, you know, all the times, and you have the ability to go back and forth through time. Why haven't you tried stopping him? And Cable was explaining that he has tried. Every time he goes back to the moment where Genosha kind of just explodes because of the invasion of these giant sentinels. Every time he tries to stop it, it just something bad happens and it prevents him from stopping it. So it's like this moment in time that is a finite moment, meaning that there are things in time that happen that are always meant to happen no matter what. And I remember the best way, or the best explanation of this was in the Flash movie. You know, however you feel about the Flash movie or whatever the case is, they explain that moment where the Flash is fighting with his other self, Michael Keaton's Batman, and Supergirl, that Batman dies, Supergirl dies, and he cannot stop that because it's this moment in time that's always constant. That no matter what they do, something always happens at that moment. So it's like not meant to be changed. You know. So Cable is trying to explain that to him, right? And then they have like this little tiff between Scott and Nathan, and you know, the kind of like father and dad kind of fight and all that. And then we fast forward just a little bit, and we see like there's a lot of people who are not against, but they're definitely not for, because of all the events that happen in Genosha, right? There's like this narrative now again of like how mutants are just dangerous. You know, kind of like if they were not able to even survive their own place where they're supposed to be living in harmony, how do we know that they can't cause this harm to us when they're living amongst us? Kind of thing like that, right? And it's really Bastion that's kind of like leading the charge in turning the tide and turning these people against mutants once again. We see that one of the lady from the UN survived the whole attack. She sees Magneto's all like tied up and indisposed because he's like the biggest threat to Bastion's plan, obviously. And all of a sudden, something switches on. Because as the X-Men are trying to investigate as to how this human hybrid, the hybrid of Sentinel human, came to be. You see Hank is in the laboratory studying Oliver Trask, who turned into that in the last episode. Rogue is knocked out. So they're trying to heal up Rogue because of her encounter in the previous episode. You know, it was confirmed that Madeline Pryor was one of the mutants who died during that attack on Genosha. Everyone still doesn't know where Magneto is. Then there's a big news thing that pops up on TV exposing Professor X, that he's still alive and he's out there in space, that some of the X-Men see for the very first time, and they're like, what? You know, so it's like, oh, look at that, they're lying to us, and da-da-da, this and that. But the big moment here, really, is when all of a sudden, it turns out that there are a lot of people who are infected with whatever this virus is that causes humans to turn into this hybrid sentinel thing, the sentinel being. And all of a sudden it spreads like wildfire. Like all of a sudden everyone gets activated. You know, this reporter that Hank kind of is soft on came to visit him, kind of try to make a truce, have a nice little, you know, powwow. All of a sudden she turns into one of those things. And now she's like battling, you know, everyone in there. And then outside the X Mansion, you have these people who are protesting mutants, and then all of a sudden half of them turn into this crazy hybrid. You have Jubilee and Sunspot. You know, they're trying to play nice because the mom is having this fundraiser to kind of support Genosha, but she's doing it just because, you know, whatever, it gives her some face time. What's up, VIA with others? What is VIA, may I ask? So as they're like out and about, all of a sudden his own butler turns into this hybrid thing. So mutants are in danger right now because now you have a lot of society turning into these hybrid sentinel beings. And that's really where the craziness all starts here, where you have the big thing happening at the X Mansion, right? Which led to some great fights. You had Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Cable doing this massive battle with a lot of these like hybrids, where they're trying to escape through the Blackbird jet, and they're attacking this jet. They're like gnats. They're like freaking wasps, and hovering this crazy thing, you know. And they do this elaborate escape while they jump into a crazy freaking Porsche. I guess you would call it the X Porsche. I don't know. Even Cable makes a comment about it too. He's just like, you have a Porsche? And Scott just has like this grimace on this kind of like grin on his face, like, I sure as do. But you have this great moment where it's like family summers fighting alongside each other, which was awesome. And then separately you had Wolverine and Nightcrawler fighting together, fighting off all of these like crazy infestation of these like hybrids. And they did this one cool thing where Nightcrawler phases Wolverine from one place to another, and we briefly saw a point of view from Wolverine of what you see when you actually phase from one place to another. And I thought that was really smart, and I loved how they did that. You know, and you see like Wolverine like, what the fuck is happening? And then boom, we're phasing out, right? What is this story? I'm recapping episode 8 of X-Men 97. The cartoon series that's airing on Disney Plus right now. Because episode 8 just dropped today. You know, so they have their fight there. You have Jubilee and Sunspot having their fight. You know, this is the first time we see Sunspot in full-on Sunspot mode, which is great. But while all of this stuff is happening, you know, Bastion is kind of like, ha ha ha, you know, oh, my plan is working. The lady from the UN is just like, I can't believe, this is all happening. This is not going to be looking good for humanity. And she ended up releasing Magneto. So Magneto is now free. And you see Magneto going off somewhere to his retreat or his hideout. And she uttered this phrase that I'll never forget. And it's probably going to be one of the things that will haunt the rest of the series. And that is, Magneto was right. Because if you remember, Magneto's fear always was that no matter what they do, humanity is going to find a way to turn on them. Humanity will even turn on themselves if given the opportunity, if they think that there's some sort of benefit behind it. You know? And as she says that, you see Magneto going to his place, and he does this crazy kind of worldwide EMP blast that wipes out all of these hybrid androids, sentinel human beings. Wipes them all out. And again, it's like one of those things like, oh, that must have been Magneto. You know, again, Magneto was right this whole time. And it's a good thing that he had this plan. But the fear is the most dangerous man right now is Magneto. Because Magneto's pissed. Right? A lot of his children, as he likes to refer to them as, died on Genosha with that major attack. You know, and he's seeing more mutants getting slaughtered because of what happened with these new hybrids. So Magneto is pissed. And the last thing you need is an angry Magneto. One who probably will just act on instinct and anger and rage. You know, going through everything. And the moment he says that, or I think it's this Wolverine saying that, you have a ship that crashes in. Because the last thing he said was, oh, kind of wish Charles was here. And as if on cue, this ship crashes down. And lo and behold, who is it? There he is, Professor X. He's back on Earth, kind of where he wanted to be this whole time. And he says, I hope I'm not too late. And he goes to me, my X-Men, which is a nice callback because that's kind of what Magneto said in one of the earlier episodes too, as he kind of took ownership of the X-Mansion and all. VIA, am I the only one? What do you mean? Are you the only one watching? I mean, there are people watching, but I think a lot of people are being kind of quiet, which is fine. But yeah, that was basically this first part of. I'm trying to think what they're calling this episode. Extension something. Episode 8 title. Let's see. Let me just look this up. Tolerance is existence. That's the name of this episode. And it's a big one. It's a lot of things happen in this episode. That's really going to pave the way for the remainder of the series, of at least this season, I should say. But Magneto was right. I will never forget that line. And that's going to be a very common thing, I think, until we get to the end of the season. And I could see it already. Professor X is back. I'm sure a lot of the X-Men are going to be confused and wondering where he's been this whole time. Why did they think he's dead when he's not? And during his like little moment, you see like Beast is just like, oh my God, like looking in amazement. You see Jean Grey looking in amazement. You see whatever. And then we see Storm. We haven't seen Storm. We haven't seen her in a minute. Ever since she regained her powers and she got her black suit back and the long hair grew out. You know? So she's definitely going to come back probably in the next episode. And it's going to be a major showdown. It's going to be like one of those three-way showdowns between the X-Men, Bastion, with Mr. Sinister lurking in the background there, and Magneto. And there's going to be another huge conflict where Magneto's like, why are you not allowing me to do this? And blah, blah, blah. And, you know, he's probably going to say, Professor X is probably going to let him know, like, oh, this is not who we are. This is not what we do. Especially with how Rogue acted in the previous episode, where she basically just let that dude fall from the roof out the window with her help, in a way. You know? So there's going to be a major three-way conflict between the groups there, and it's going to be nothing but insanity for the last 2 episodes of the season. So yeah, I'm very much excited for all this stuff to happen, and I can't wait I can't wait to see how things are going to pan out, because it's going to be quite a ride, I think. And again, this season and this series has proven to be very entertaining and very well done, very enjoyable. It's amazing, like what was done and how the writing is so good. It's definitely more adult than the original animated series, which is fine, because again, I feel like this is geared towards an older generation like mine, who remember watching the cartoon back in the day, a younger generation who's now grown up, right? This series was never meant to be introduced to younger kids to know about the X-Men. This is more for people my age, people who are a little older from when the original animated show came out, to kind of enjoy a continuation of that series, watching it and not having it be very kid friendly, right? There's a lot of violence in the show, it's a very horny show. Everyone's trying to hook up with somebody. But I loved what they're doing with this, and it's been a lot of fun. So it's going to be one of those things where the next 2 episodes after the last episode airs, I'm going to be like, oh, I kind of wish I could see more of it. I don't know when season 2 is planning to come out, probably next year. And it's going to be one of those where it's going to be a tough wait, if I'm going to be very honest. So that's my little recap on X-Men 97 episode 8. Would love to know how much you're enjoying the series, if you loved the episode, if you had a chance to see it. Definitely let me know all your thoughts in the comments and all that. But yeah, I think, because right now here on the East Coast, it is already approaching 1 a.m. I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it for the evening. Again, very abnormal timing for this stream, I know. I just wanted to go live as soon as I was able to come back home and talk about The Fall Guy, which was at the beginning of this stream. And, of course, talk about my experience with watching Alien for the first time on the big screen, and my recap of X-Men that I've been doing every week. So, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for tuning in and for hanging out. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for showing up and showing some support. Again, if you haven't done so yet, don't forget, hit that like button if you can. I would totally appreciate it. Also, and if you didn't like this, you can go ahead and hit the dislike too. That's perfectly fine. If you want to stay up to date with everything I do here on the channel, obviously the best thing to do is to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you get notified every time a new video or a stream goes live here on the channel. I'll be back live again on Friday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time, normal time on Friday, to recap a lot of the week's big news in movies and pop culture. And if I have a chance to review something that I've watched recently, of course, those are the times I'll do it there too. But with all that being said, until next time, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. I will catch you all in the next one. All right, peace out, everybody. Good night.